Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar here from Model AG, how to customize cutting plans for efficiency, transparency, and profitability. My name is Bradley Robb, and I'll be your co-host. I work as international business developer and also consultant here at T.CON, and I'm excited to be co-hosting this session today. We have not one, but three great speakers lined up for you. I'm pleased to briefly introduce them. First off will be Alfred Becker. He is Global Lead for Solution Management for Plastics, Paper, and Packaging Industries at SAP. He's been with SAP since 1999, and for the last 8 years, he's been helping plastics, paper, and packaging companies in converting to a truly digital business. He will start off today's webinar by giving a brief intro into specifics of the paper industry. Then Christian Baum will take over. He is Team Leader for Business Applications at Swiss-based Model AG. Today, he's going to share what challenges Model AG as a paper producer faced in the past, what they did about it, and what has changed since. Then, Gerhard Goebel will jump in the practical part and show in a live demo what our trim solution can do. Gerhard is a senior consultant for supply chain management here at T.CON. He's developed Trim Suite and is the beating heart and soul of trim optimization here at the company. Before we start, just a couple of notes. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation. If you have a question for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the GoToWebinar. You can enter in questions there as they come available. We will be answering the questions at the end of the session. We will also be recording this webinar. You can take a look at it again afterwards or pass it on to your colleagues, for example. So without any further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Mr. Becker.
Thank you, Brett, for the brief introduction. I wanted to put today's webinar in a perspective of overall digital transformation that is happening already, and it probably touches most of us in these days. Of course, it's relevant for the paper industry as well, or paper and packaging industry. We all know these examples where there's a decline of graphical magazine papers because people consume their stuff on an e-reader or an iPad. Or on the other hand, you have examples of internet sales there's a lot of internet sales going on in these days, and all these parcels, of course, require packaging paper. So digital transformation can be good and bad at the same time, but you have to be aware of and you have to react. And this is exactly what you see on this slide. The investigation of PwC found out that most CEOs also of paper companies are aware of what's going on, and they took action, kickstarted initiatives. But that's more or less an external view or a market view. Now, if you go within a company, of course, digital transformation offers quite some opportunities for improvement. That could be something like developing new business models, new distribution channels, or simply inventing new business processes. Honestly, out of my personal experience, most things that I see, or most projects which are going on, is process improvements. Process improvements in a way that you would revisit what you're doing, and you want to enrich that with data that helps someone to make better decisions, or you have an automated or integrated process, or you can provide all data which is available to everyone who would require it at all times to help people do their things right. And obviously, this is best done on a platform that would allow for that kind of integration. So a platform that is strong enough to support you with running your business and still collect data and still enrich everything with the right data to make better decisions. Now, this is what I wanted to start with. This is this graphics that you should see now is a sketch of SAP's solution offering in these days. I will talk you through that for a second. On the lower left side, you see the ERP system, these days called S/4HANA, which allows you to run core processes like manufacturing or materials management. And on the upper right corner, you would have cloud solutions, which apply well to very standardized and industry agnostic processes or well, areas like human resource management or procurement. And on the lower right side, you have the SAP Cloud Platform that can serve as an integration platform, or that can also serve as your application or application development platform. So here is where you would create IoT applications that can do some prediction, and this can then be consumed, for example, during a standard transaction to help the processor to do the right thing. And an overarching theme would be integration. An overarching theme is analytics across everything, and also the UI, the theory. While we believe that this platform is a good starting point or a good basis for paper companies as well, it has to be noted that it's by far not complete. For example, many paper companies may need an MES, manufacturing execution system, or they may require trim optimization. And while there are many vendors on the market, I'm really glad to say here is one opportunity to have these kind of functions or applications on the SAP platform. So with T.CON, together with SAP, we're able to provide you with a pretty complete solution offering all on one integrated platform, which helps you leverage your existing data and get all the benefits of doing prediction and so on and so forth. And well, I can talk a lot about theory, but I'm very glad that we have Mr. Baum from Model AG, who is a real world user of exactly that kind of solution. And now I'm happy to hand over to Mr. Baum. So the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Alfred. Thank you very much. So yeah, my name is Christian Baum, and like said in the introduction, I'm responsible at Model AG, located in Switzerland, for the part of business applications. And one of the biggest applications that we are hosting is SAP ERP, and also some other products from the SAP. But before going to the details, maybe a few words only about the Model company. So the Model is a family-owned company, was founded already in 1882, so already a long time in the market. And the main business, let's say, part is the corrugated packaging. What you can see also in the pictures here on the screen, this is something that is typical for our company. And we are located in Europe, so we are a Europe-based company. I have here some information, let's say, where you can find us. The headquarter is in Switzerland, in so-called Weinfelden. And here in Weinfelden is also one of the two paper plants where we have now introduced the SAP software. And the second paper plant is also in Switzerland, in Niedergösgen. And these two plants were not running SAP, although we are using SAP ERP and also the SCM system, the APO, for quite a long time. So the ERP history of Model AG started in the 90s when we went to the Czech Republic. And after that, in 2003, the ERP, including the complete logistic parts of SAP with all the modules, were introduced in Switzerland. But this was not valid or not true for the two paper plants. And that was also the reason why we said, okay, we need to check this a little bit more in detail, what we're going to do in the future with that. Here you have some figures about the Model Group. So we are across these Europe sites, what you just saw, roughly nearly 4,300 employees. And regarding the paper production, we have 3 paper machines, as mentioned, in 2 locations. And the rough capacity of these machines in a year is about 400,000 tons. And last year, we were lucky to meet nearly this, what we can say, total output. So we had not many downtimes. And we're therefore very happy with the result also. But the result is not everything. There were more and more requests from the business side regarding the ERP and also the data. So to be a little bit more precise, we did not have an MES system in the production. we had only an own built ERP system called ESP or ISP. And with this, we were simply registering the reels when they were coming into stock and putting a label on, but there were no recording of consumptions, no recording of times. And in fact, when it was coming to the trim optimization, we were using another software from GSE software. This is from Germany, a software. But there we had already the first problem, because this software needs also orders to run. And we had a separate order entry for the ESP system and for the GSE system. So there was a small interface between, but yeah, the users had many times to do manual changes in both systems. And then also the recording of the production was not happening. So when you really wanted to know how far we are with an order, you took the phone. That was it. So no system available for that. Yeah, and this, I think, in the sum you can solve. These were inefficient processes, and as Mr. Becker said, now I think in the 21st century, data is the foundation where you build decisions on, and we wanted to go there one step ahead. And for us, it was more or less clear that we were looking for a solution based on SAP. One main reason was, of course, because we had already the ERP system in-house, and this is also our strategic ERP system. And the second thing is that also the corrugated packaging plants in Switzerland use the SAP ERP system, and of course we were looking for an integrated process with these paper plants and the corrugated packaging plants. So the question was more or less with whom we will do it, so that it will be SAP. It was more or less clear. And we decided for T.CON. Yeah, not at least because we found that the integration of their trim suite within the SAP, but not was very fine, was perfect matching. But in fact, it's also, let's say, all around that stuff. So the add-ons which they offered in the logistic parts for the warehouse management, for example, and also for the planning part, the pre-configuration was matching very well. And also the team made a good impression to us. So therefore we decided that it will be T.CON. And the project was started in February 2018 with the first preparations. And 1 year later, so in February 2019, we went live with the complete part. And yeah, below you can see some pictures from the go live. This was really at the first day, where the guys from T.CON were also here in Weinfelden and in Niedergösgen, helping us to get this in start. Now, especially focusing the trim, I think as already mentioned, we had a lot of manual processes before, and in this GSE system, for example, you had no possibility to include in a very easy way, for example, a rush order or to throw an order out. So yeah, I think it was a very time-consuming and inefficient process there. And now I can say, I think from a system point of view, of course, the planners, they're happy because they use one planning system, the APO, and with this system, they can also do out of the box the trim optimization, so they don't have to break the media or go to another system, so it's really seamlessly integrated. I think so our trim needs is not very high. I think in the example which you will see later, you will see even a little bit more than what we are what was our requirement. But in the end, I think we have a really high user acceptance and improved usability. And the process improvements were even, I think, greater than this system improvement. So we had uncoordinated processes. I think, as mentioned, when you need to take the phone to call into production, how far is the order? I think this is not the goal. This was not the goal for us. So now we implemented beside the trim also the MES system from T.CON, and really have now a live view. We can directly see how far is this order, how was the performance. We measure already data from the machine also with the MES system. So we have a connection via OPC where we get some orders. And I think now we can say we have really much better processes also within the production. And from a trim point of view, because it is, let's say the orders are blocked. So every order with the same paper type is, let's say, in the same block. This helps also for the planners to easily find the orders which they can combine. And therefore the order entry time and also the trim time, so the process time needed for the trim has lowered a lot. And they're really, I can say, happy with the system. I spoke to them already a few days ago. And they confirmed me this. What I can unfortunately not provide is the trim loss reduction we have, because as mentioned, we did not measure it before. We had no MES system. Therefore, I cannot say, okay, we really have a loss in reduction, but for me, it seems, and also as this is a feedback from the production managers, that we have really a good feeling about it. And that is also an improvement in this area. So, and now I think I would like to hand over to Mr. Goebel, and I think he can show you a little bit more about the solution in the system itself. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. My name is Gerhard Goebel, and I have the pleasure to cover the next 20 minutes. The topics that I have on my agenda for the remaining time are, firstly, I will introduce T.CON as a company. Secondly, I will spend a couple of minutes and a few slides on introducing the trim suite solution, based on some slides. And last but not least, I will switch to a live system demo. So let's get started with introducing the company. T.CON is like an SAP partner company. We are a value-added reseller of SAP software. So we sell SAP software, and we also do implementation projects. Basically, we cover the majority of the applications and products that SAP is offering. T.CON has a history of 20 years by now. We have something like 250 plus employees by now. We also do system hosting, running more than 500 customer systems worldwide. And as Alfred already mentioned, we also do development of software. We do that actually in alliance with SAP. We do that wherever we feel or experience from our projects that there is a need, because there is a functional gap within the SAP coverage of requirements of our customers. And most of all, we do that also as close as possible to SAP technology, as you will see in the examples that we can show today. What are the goals and targets of T.CON? Well, actually, the major goal that we have is actually to provide or make our customers happy and successful and make them grow. So we try to cover their requirements, especially in the area of production planning, as well as possible, not only covering what they do today, but enabling them to grow in future. Of course, our own goal is also to grow. We do that by driving our global activities and also by driving our product development activities. On this slide, actually, you see a small subset of the customers that we serve. The highlighted ones are customers that are working or operating in the area of mill, so they produce or operate on reels and sheets. Not all of them, of course, use the trim suite by now, but some others are also missing in the area. And finally, I would like to state that, of course, we try to be as good as possible, and we try to get certifications. So we are a gold partner of SAP, and we have a couple of certifications for the services that we provide in the area of hosting, for example. But also, most of the products that we have are certified. So let's get to the second part of my piece of the demo. I would like to introduce the trim suite as a product from T.CON. Well, the trim suite, of course, is a tool for running cut optimization. We cover the area of productions of reel and sheets. We have application areas where we do that on a single level, just producing reels that come out of a paper machine, like in the case of a model HE. But of course, we also have scenarios where the reels that are cut in a second step to smaller reels or to sheets. So we talk about multi-stage optimization and such a case. Now, what is the main point about this trim suite that comes from T.CON? As you might know, there are like a couple of products available on the market that cover this challenge very well. The main difference is that trim suite is coded 100% in ABAP, so it's running on SAP technology. All you need actually is a NetWeaver system. It runs on ERP, it runs on S/4HANA, on APO. You could even run it on HR or CRM if you want to do that. The solution itself, not only the interface to the planning system, is certified by now. I mentioned that it's coded 100% in ABAP. Of course, there is like a math optimization running in background. For that, you need a so-called solver if you use linear programming. For that piece, actually, we utilize a solver that is free of charge to use, and it's actually used and shipped by SAP itself. So you probably already have it in your system. All you need is actually some application that is calling that piece to utilize it for your cut optimization challenges. Of course, every piece of standard software that you try to apply in your company needs to be adjusted to fit your personal requirements. You're very well aware of that from within all SAP applications. So this is typically done by setting up master data the way you need it, by customizing the application the way you need it, and eventually enhancing it using the enhancement framework from SAP. Exactly the same set of options you have within the trim suite. We have a little bit of master data, like resource related basically. We can do a little bit of customizing to make the application work the way you need it. And eventually, in rare cases, we need and can enhance the solution using the existing enhancement options that you need, that you know from all of SAP's applications. Finally, I would like to mention that we also work on cloud deployment options for the trim suite. From a business point of view, I would like to state that the trim suite is, again, totally SAP-centric. So it was developed from the view of SAP planning requirements, actually. So we try to be as close as possible to what actually planning systems need in terms of cut optimization. I mentioned before that trim suite runs on any system, but of course in real life you will need to integrate it. You need to pick up your order data and send it over to the trim solution. Mr. Baum just mentioned that in his previous system there was an interface or eventually even a manual interface to feed the trim optimization software. If we look at the way customers can do production planning within SAP, there is actually a choice of two options. One is the classical PP, the application production planning, which is part of the classical ERP system. And there is the application called PPDS, which used to be part of the APO system only. Actually, trim suite comes with integration to both of those areas. So we can call trim suite from the classical PP using like a jump off from the production information system COIS. But actually, we prefer to use PPDS, simply due to the fact that PPDS covers quite a lot classical planning requirements that are especially needed in the area of mill customers. So PPDS can do finite planning, for example, and it can do planning based on characteristics. So one feature Mr. Baum mentioned before is block planning. You will see that in a second in my demo. This is something you can do within PPDS. On the graphical piece on the right side, you can see that PPDS used to be part of APO. But I would like to mention that PPDS is by now also, PPDS is also available within S4. And for the usage of the trim suite in PPDS, we have a very nice way to connecting actually the planning environment with the trim suite itself. PPDS has a heuristic framework, and for that reason, actually trim is embedded into simply a heuristic of the PPDS. And as a matter of fact, actually, you can then call this trim heuristic from any planning tool that is available in PPDS. So you can use like a product view, which is equivalent to MDO4. You can call it from the planning board. While doing that, we can pick up the data that is available there in the planning board, independent of the modeling options that you have. So any kind of modeling that is common is covered. So by selecting the data in the planning board, we can jump into the trim tool, do the trim optimization, and very important, coming back from the trim tool, we are also able to model the results of the trim optimization within the planning. This is something I will show to you in a couple of minutes within the real-life demo. So to summarize, actually, I would like to mention that trim actually reduces to what it is in real life. It's a quite complex function, but it's a function that needs to be executed within the planning process by the planner. And by using the trim as a heuristic in PPDS, trim is nothing else but just a planning function. Yeah, there is no big integration project. There is no system break. It's just calling a feature of the planning tool. And at Model AG, I remember this very well. We started on a Thursday morning to implement trim, and we did trimming and creation of trim sheet orders, which is the way to model the trim result, by noon. So it took half a day to make it work. Before we switch to the system demo, there is one more slide that I would like to cover roughly. This is like a slide you might have a look at afterwards. In more detail, this covers the main key benefits that we have. Just to pick up a few of the items that I mentioned there, of course, trim optimization is always about waste reduction. This is obvious, but there is much more that we have to consider within trimming. One topic is, of course, maximizing the yield if there is like tolerance being provided by the sales orders. There is something like reducing setup times. Eventually, we have to minimize the material you have on stock by executing trim based on existing stock, and lots of other things. But I would like to stop here showing the slides and switch to a system demo. Actually, one more slide of that. This is like a summary of what I would like to show to you in the following. I do have 3 examples I would like to present. The first one is an example on real production in paper industry. This is actually a setup that is pretty close to what Model AG is doing. It's a little more complex actually, but still it's quite similar to the processes they have. And I will do this example out of the planning board of PPDS, so you see like the real-life integration of the trim application that we offer. This will be followed by an example where we do a multi-stage optimization. So we have there a set of orders for sheets, and the challenge is to take care about the production of reels and sheets at the same time. And the last example will be an example from the area of film. So there we will do a stock-based trimming where for each of the stock elements that we have in the warehouse, we also have a list of quality issues. Yeah, so this will be a trim from stock, including quality challenges. So let me switch to the system. The first demo that I have is actually out of the planning board of PPDS. So what you see here actually is one of the planning tools that SAP standard is offering, in this case in an APO system, but it would look exactly the same in S4 by now. So on the horizontal axis, you see the timeline. Vertically, you see a set of resources. And this is an example of paper production. There has been order entry for a whole set of sales orders, and they all were planned downstream using exact lot size. So that's like visualize the material flow for one of these orders, and you see that the production planning starts down there on the paper machine where actually jumbo material has to be produced. These jumbos then are passed over to the coating line. After the coating line, the cutting takes place. So we have the slitting or cutting line. This is actually the level where trim optimization comes into play. And finally, there's another level of operation, which is the packaging line. Again, it doesn't need to be as complex as this. At Model HE, the setup is much more simple than this, but nevertheless, it displays quite nicely the way the trim suite is working and integrated into PVDS. So let's switch into trimming now. The challenge is actually to pick up all the orders that are there on the slitting line, like somewhere in the planning board. Now, the advantage of block planning is that the paper machine orders, they all collected themselves down in this block. So the only thing the planner has to do is actually mark this block and start one of the heuristics of APO. In this case, it's the trim suite heuristic. So from there, we simply switch into trim suite. A little explanation on what you see here. I don't have enough time to explain everything, of course. You see various steps. The first one contains the list of orders that have been passed over from production planning to the trim tool. So we have order numbers, we have the width of the reels, we have quantities, tolerances, and whatever is needed to really describe the requirements precisely. Secondly, we have a list of resources. These are the cutting resources that we have, including their technical properties. This is a kind of piece of master data that you need to maintain once before using the trim solution. And finally, there is a tab called optimization. In here, actually, the planner can describe his personal definition of the optimized solution. As mentioned before, of course, it's always about minimizing losses. But again, it's also much more, depending on the possibilities of your resources. Setup time might be a small issue, might be a big issue. So by assigning cost functions to various aspects that somehow influence the optimization, you can kind of tell the solution what your personal definition of an optimized solution is. So once this is done, the only thing you have to do is actually start a solution and go for the optimization. So this is the result of this first example. What do we see down there? We see the overall quantity on paper that is needed from the coating line. We see the overall loss, which is 0.1%. Net loss, the gross loss is a little higher. It includes like the technical loss that we have on the left and on the right of the patterns. We see some further information about the overall KPIs. Of course, it's possible to dive into more detail. This now is the list of patterns that we have with the number of sets and so on. Of course, the solution is interactive, so you can, of course, check which order is covered from which items in the graphical piece. You could also go for like a drag and drop to change the cutting plan in case this is necessary. So overall, you see that within a few seconds, you come up with a rather optimized cutting plan. So this is actually the demo number one, but there is one piece missing. The question is, how do we transfer this information back into the planning system? First of all, the details of the cutting plan that you see here are not really relevant for the production planner. Of course, production execution has to be aware of those. For that reason, actually, when saving the result here, we send the cutting plans over to ECC, and from there to the MES system. In our case, and in Model HE, this is MES Cut, which is another product from T.CON, but it could be any system, of course. So the details in there are not relevant for production planning. Of course, we need to know which orders are covered by this trim solution and what are the quantities that have been trimmed. And of course, we need to know what is the quantity needed for the downstream planning. And actually, this is what we put back to the planning system. I saved this one here. We get a so-called trim sheet order being created. And I would like to pull your attention to the graphical piece in the background here on the planning board. If I confirm this one, you can see that actually the planning situation cleared up to a high degree. There is only one order left on the cutting level, and this order is serving all the packaging orders that we have on top. But downstream, there is only one order on the coating line and one order on the paper machine line. So let's have a short look at this order. And you see, oh, sorry, I picked the wrong one. This one is the right one. So this is a so-called trim sheet order. So it's an object provided by SAP actually, having multiple outputs. So actually in here we see whatever has to be cut out of this one cutting order. So all the sales order lines are covered with the quantities being trimmed. And downstream towards the coating line, there is only one component containing the full quantity out of the trim application, including all the trim losses that we have. So you can see that actually using Trim Suite integrated in a PPDS, we not only have a trim application which is running quite well, but we also have the full integration, meaning sending data to the trim tool and also working with the results and putting it back to the planning board in the right manner. This was example number one. My second example, as I mentioned before, is a little bit more sophisticated. Here we called Trim Suite not as a set of real orders, but in this case the orders are for sheeting. Yeah, so they are described by like the sheet dimensions, by the orientation and the number of sheets that we have in a ream. And now here the challenge is to come up with a cutting plan for two levels at the same time. So the challenge is we have to create jumbo reels, we have to cut them into smaller reels so we can feed them to the sheeting line. And this is like a small example for like a so-called multi-stage optimization. So let's see what the trim is proposing out of that list of orders to give you a rough understanding of what we do here. So what you see here actually is a result that is divided into areas. The green piece over there is actually the cutting proposal for cutting jumbo reels to small reels, while the lower part actually is the list of cutting patterns for the sheeting line. So we can have a look at this in more detail. So this is actually the proposal from the solution to create jumbo reels. In this case, like the jumbo width is variable, which sometimes is the case, while the second piece then down there is consuming what is coming out of the first piece, the reel cutting. And here we get the proposal on how to cut that down to all the sheet pallets that we need. So this was my second example, like demonstrating that a Trim Suite is very well capable of doing a multi-stage optimization. And this leads me over to my last example. Let me get out of here and start the last example. Now, this example is actually from a real life customer that we have. What they are doing is that they put color on film, and by doing that, actually they use quality inspection systems to make sure that the color coverage on the film is perfect, which not always is the case. So for that reason, when they cut the coated film to small reels to ship them to their customers, actually they have to be aware of the quality issues on the mother reels and make sure that the cutting is avoiding those areas. So for that reason, in this example, you see not only a list of orders for like small reels, but we also have a list of receipt elements. In this case, it's a list of batches that you have in your warehouse. Each of the batches, again, of course, has some dimension, it has a quantity or a length. And in addition to that, we have a set of quality information. So in this example, you see that there is like a defect area on the very left side of the reel from 0 to 20 millimeters. There is another bad area at the very right side of the reel, and there's one in the middle. And now the big challenge to the trim application is to actually make sure that we get a perfect cutting pattern, minimizing losses, minimizing setup times, but at the same time avoid the defect areas. And again, it's only running the optimizer once, and you get like a result that looks a little different to what you saw before. I need to explain that a little. Basically, you see that the black areas are the defects that we saw before down there. So like the last one relates to this black area and so on. Then you see that actually there is a splicing taking place. So more than one batch was utilized. For that reason, we have like a splicing line down there. And of course, the trim application is also aware of splicing requirements from your customer. Yeah? And finally, you see that there is always an adjustment of the splicing in such a way that the first knife has not to be moved at the end of the game. So this was my last example. So you saw like trimming from PVDs from the planning board. On a real example, you saw multi-stage optimization for cutting reels and sheet, and the final example was on quality trim, a trim from stock, including the defect information on the slides. Thank you very much for your attention, and I would be happy to answer any questions in case there are any.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gerhard. As Gerhard just mentioned, we have now an opportunity to ask any questions or have any questions answered. I'm not sure we're going to have an opportunity to talk later, so I wanted to thank our speakers, Mr. Becker and Mr. Baum. Thank you so much for taking the time today and giving us some insights into the world of trim optimization, and of course to Gerhard for also his interesting demonstration as well. And if you have any comments, questions, or want to get more information, feel free to reach out to myself or Gerhard, whoever you would be happy to get in touch with. So thank you very much, and all the best. Until then.